Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Paranormal Planet Live. I am Jack Carey, the founder of the Paranormal Intelligence Agency, and I thank you for being back with us this evening. Tonight, we're going to discuss something that's profound, something that affects every one of us, something that we all wonder about, and that is the afterlife and how this particular trail of evidence takes us away from what the norm is, as far as what most people believe happens after you pass from this particular dimension. And there's a lot of paranormal crosswinds that occur when you examine a lot of the contactee and abductee testimony that has come about in the last 40, 50 years, going all the way back to at least Betty and Barney Hill, and Antonio Villa Boas in Egypt, or in Brazil is probably the first that we know of. And so, excuse me, I'm sucking down coffee tonight because I am wiped out, very close, as you guys know, to making my way out of this state and going about 1,000 miles south. It is at this location that I've been given access to my own cryptozoology laboratory. As far as cryptozoology goes, it is used as a hunting preserve for one individual who owns the 1,000-acre ranch and for his a couple of his family members, and that's it. So there's only 3 human beings that ever are on this property, and there are large amounts of time in between them being there. So this is something that most cryptozoologists dream about, and I've been given that chance. So that's what we're going to be doing. And it just so happens he's a childhood friend of mine, and I'm getting old, and so I'm moving back home where my family is. So I am an Oklahoma native, believe it or not. I don't have the accent, but I've been gone from home for 30 years, exploring the world and all these many mysteries. So let's get back to the subject at hand. Alien soul containers, alien resurrection technology, and what the best remote viewers are calling simply the death traps. And this is something that a lot of them have been picking up on, and they're targeting that they've been doing concerning what happens in the afterlife. So it's interesting because these targets were given to a number of different individuals, and they all described the same thing when it comes to the death traps. The soul containers, as the abductees are always coming back telling us about, is a fascinating subject. And all of this stretches into the esoteric. It stretches into spirituality and religion and other paranormal phenomenon, and this kind of bleeds into everything. And going forward, given the OSEP findings, I think that this will be the serious path of paranormal investigation going forward, examining the questions that these two phenomenon present. So for a lot of you that maybe haven't heard of alien resurrection technology or alien soul containers, it just so happens that a number of people have reported that during their abduction experiences, which it's interesting, it's not like all of them are violent affairs. the aliens often have conversations with them. The humans often ask them questions, and those questions are often answered. And a lot of these testimony, they talk about how the aliens have told them that they have a technology where they extract a soul, any consciousness from its container or body in this dimension, and that they're able to put that consciousness, that soul, back into another, what they call soul container, we call a body. This is carefully and beautifully interwoven with genetics in this universe, and all of this melds and fits together. This is the area of paranormal research where flesh and spirit collide, where matter and spirit interact. It's that exact point, right? And these abductees tell us that the aliens have the ability to perfectly clone a body that can house the soul of someone who's about to shed their current container. It's a fascinating idea, right? We've often, as a species, there's all kinds of sci-fi movies talking about this kind of technology. And it's interesting because this testimony goes back decades, and long before Hollywood picked up on the idea and duplicated it in some sci-fi movies. Now, the Mantis Beings, which all of us are familiar with, appear to also have a role in all of this. If you've followed my past episodes or know about abduction, you'll know about the Mantis Beings, who appear to be in charge, if you will, of the gray beings who are performing the actual robotic function of the abductions. And that's what they are. They are biological robots by and large, not all of them. It has been seen where alien gray soul containers were grown for what appeared to be actual sentient beings that could feel emotion, etc. So these Mantis beings, it's interesting because most often I would say they're presented as negative in nature, demonic, evil, etc. And it breaks down, strangely enough, though, and this presents another side of the argument. And as investigators, it's important to always examine that other side. And it really breaks down to about a 60-40. And that's something that even Linda Moulton Howe and a few others that have been around forever agree with. And 60% of them actually have a good experience. They think these creatures are wise, ancient, actually have a stake in or care about the human species. And I find that fascinating because it's in the other 40%, the minority, that you find the negative, these things were cold. It stared into my eye. It took over my mind. It did all of these things. But they also, abductees who have had conversations with the mantises, and not many have, but they come back and they've said that they feel completely entitled. They always use that word, entitled, to what they are doing. With our genetics and this genetic program, long-running one that they have, been running for a very, very long time. So they talk about how the human consciousness is really, and everything that we see, everything that we touch, everything that we are, is really a light. It's a frequency, right? And physicists believe now that there's 88 I believe is what they said, 88 dimensions. That is amazing. So you can think of these dimensions like keys on a piano, right? So each key is another dimension, and each key is a separate frequency, right? So you just change the frequency and you can enter into another dimension. Now, if you go back and examine the episode where I talked about the FBI document, going all the way back to just right after Roswell, talking about how the aliens materialize upon hitting the vibrational rate of this dimension. All of this is beginning to come together in a way that never made sense before. So, let me see where to take you from here, guys, because this kind of gets complicated. So, don't need any of that. Now, a lot of this is interesting because these creatures who are doing all of this technology, and this is something I've pointed out many times ever since really a deep examination of the Rendlesham event, is that they're humanoid in form. And that's a problem for biologists, astrobiologists, whatever you want to call people who speculate about human life, because, you know, it's a lot of accidents, things that occur in your surroundings, etc., that sort of fuel evolution, and they don't think that that would exactly occur in a way that would produce humanoid beings on other planets. However, there has been an article published in the last few weeks by a prominent scientist who presents a very valid idea that, in fact, evolution may work in such a way as to only produce humanoid beings, in which case they would be readily seen throughout the universe. And there is a very valid scientific argument that he makes, right? So check that out. It's really, really interesting. But when you talk about these aliens that the FBI document talks about them materializing when they hit the vibrational rate of our existence, of our dimension, everything begins to make sense, because the human soul, the human consciousness itself, whether it be human or alien or whatever, appears to be a kind of frequency. And as we're sitting here in this dimension, we are harmonically resonating with the frequency of this dimension. Now, if you change that frequency, if you have the technology to do so, to alter yourself to the point where you are resonating with the next frequency, you can project yourself into that dimension. It's called harmonic resonance, and it's the idea, and this is central to all of the teaching that I do, going back to the ancient mystery schools. I believe this to be the ultimate secret that they kept. The idea is this: you have a body of matter here, you have a body of matter here. There are ways, each one of them is vibrating to its own frequency. There are ways of altering matter so that it picks up the frequency of the other. And any change in one will instantaneously occur in the other because they share the same frequency. That's difficult to conceptualize, but a lot easier way would be to describe a man walking into, or let's say you're walking into a room, and at one end there's a gentleman playing a fiddle, and on the other end of the room there is an empty piano. Nobody's at. And as the gentleman is playing his violin, you can walk over to the piano and look down, and for every note that he strikes on the violin, it's the same frequency as the note that you see on the piano, and those strings will vibrate as he's playing them. Each note on that string will vibrate as he's playing that same frequency. That is the same idea. This secret was encoded in the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it just so happens that in that secret, which I talk about extensively in the past on ancient civilizations, etc., is that the star Sirius B and our star appear to have a harmonic relationship with one another. And because of that, the Sirius B, when it vibrates, when it hits a certain frequency, it interacts with our star, and our star actually affects biology on this planet. This is one of the great secrets and why Sirius was so revered. Now, there's a tribe in West Africa called the Dogon tribe, and every year on July 23rd, they have what's called the Day of the Bado. And the Day of the Bado is when they believe Sirius emanates special signals. That's what they call it in their language, special signals. And those signals interact with our star, and like I said, it affects biology on the planet, and this is a holy day to them. And it's been something that they were charged with keeping the knowledge of ever since they were part of ancient Egypt. And they were traced back to ancient Egypt by two French anthropologists in the 1930s. It's a fascinating story if you've not gone into that. It is, I have a film all about that here on the channel, and it's called Sirius, the Lost Alien Science. And you'll see everything that I'm talking about with this harmonic resonance. So the Rendlesham event is interesting in all of this because when Jim Penniston had this message projected into his mind, he remembers bits and pieces of the message. And basically, they told him, or this completely autonomous piece of technology relayed to him that this was genetic material being collected to use as band-aids. Now, that word was something that really made an impression in his mind, and one of the things that he was absolutely certain that they were talking about. Maybe those band-aids. And he got the impression that these were being used to help the species survive in another timeline, another alternate future where humanity is suffering this genetic breakdown. Fascinating. It really is fascinating. And, this brings us to, interestingly enough, to the Book of Enoch, which I often talk about. In the Book of Enoch, he talks about the Watchers, who were obviously alien creatures. And in the Book of Enoch, it says that he never died. He was translated into a new body, and that he would be with the Watchers thereafter. They took Enoch with them because he was, I guess, very loyal, and he was a scribe and all of that. But anyway, it states that he went through this process. Now, how is it the most ancient Jewish text available, which is the Book of Enoch, 9 copies found at Qumran, mentions alien resurrection technology that these abductees are coming back with? That's pretty profound stuff. So I've talked about before that I believe that one of the ancient mysteries school secrets is contained in the Kabbalah Tree of Life, and that it shows a map of 11 dimensions. And I believe that there are only 11 that are accessible from this particular dimension, but from those others, it kind of spreads out. And I believe that because of that map. The backside Sephira leads into what they believe is sort of the dark side of creation, if you will. And that could be where, malicious entities live on specific particular dimensions. So that kind of leads us in also to the holographic universe theory. More and more physicists are signing on to the idea that our universe is a hologram. It's being projected. And what that insinuates is that the projector is outside of this dimension. Can't have the projector and the projection in the same dimension. So then naturally the question arises, who's projecting the image? Who is projecting us into reality? Which is also a fascinating idea. Now, this also covers the idea of cattle mutilation, strangely enough, because the remote viewer, Joseph McMoneagle, who is the most decorated remote viewer, he's the one that got the Silver Star while he was actively working for the CIA as a remote viewer. And he was tasked with a cattle mutilation. And this cattle mutilation is featured, interestingly enough, in the book Hunt for the Skinwalker. And it's the mutilation, if you recall, where the ranchers actually were branding cattle. And they branded a calf, and then they walked like 300 yards away to brand another. They accomplished that job. They stood up and turned around, and they noticed the mother of the calf hobbling. So they went back, and she had a broken leg, and the calf itself had been completely butchered. There's a photo. I actually have a photograph of it. I should have brought it up. If you can imagine a calf being consumed from the top down, and only the splayed out remains. Legs in front, back legs splayed out and back, and just flat. The top had just been sheared off, right? Well, McMoneagle was given that as a blind target. And what he described was that it was done by a machine, and that machine originated in another dimension. And that's published in one of his books. So that is also fascinating. So what we're looking at here is the idea that death itself may be just a frequency change. That as we die, our frequency changes into another frequency. And it could be, our bodies are wearing out. The frequency we're attuned to through our existence here may end up being what determines the dimension you go to next, right? I mean, it's a possible logical deduction. And let's say if you're vibrating with or attuned to a particular religion and the iconography, etc., who's to say you're not attuned to that frequency vibration level and will be projected into a dimension by where that is the reality? See, this gets us into all kinds of esoteric ideas. And the human mind can barely conceive of where this leads, and yet this is where the overall path of paranormal research is leading. All paranormal investigators are going to wind up right here talking about what I'm talking about to you guys. This is where the path leads. And so with the remote viewer McMoneagle, I wanted to talk about remote viewers who are picking up what they call the death traps, and how this is related to the growing of soul containers that can contain a human soul. I am as yet, I'm still stumped. But what they're reporting is that they were targeting various people blindly after they had died. So the day after, what were they? That's the timeline they were given. What occurred to these people? This was given to a number of remote viewers, and all of them came back describing the same basic mechanism. And this runs into the prison planet theory. So what appeared to them was that the Earth is a prison planet, that souls are recycled within this prison to keep them here within the prison. That they are sent here from all over the place, and that souls do not have a capital punishment. You can never destroy a soul. So the only way to rid yourself of a being is to put them in one of these prison planet recycling systems. They detected that the souls were, after death, experiencing pain, flashing lightning bolts, a very bright, what they said, electrostatic sounding light that would turn into something beautiful and obviously be something that the soul would be attracted to. Now, they detected that these electrostatic lights that project these images are the traps themselves. And as the person goes through there is what they said was basically electrostatic fields that hit you to the point where all memory is lost. And you are then reborn again on this planet, and you remain here as a prisoner for who knows how long. What that, of course, means is that all of us here are convicts, you included, and I'm blaming all of you guys for this. Yeah, we must have done something really, really bad. And so, shame on all of you. So, that's not, though, the end of it. There was a ray of hope. They also detected an individual who had made their way through these traps. This individual did not go towards those doorways that were projecting these different images with this electrostatic sound and thunder and stuff. Instead, went down a path that they could barely see down, apparently, and then all of a sudden they're out of that system. That's what was reported. That's all they could tell. It was fascinating that all of them reported the electrostatic thing. All of them reported this prison planet recycling system. And I asked, what are we looking at? Is that happening in another dimension, right? Because we die, and then our soul is in this dimension, and they're able to, in this dimension, have different physics. It's a different reality matrix. They can have different technology. They can do whatever they want. Their technologies are what we call spiritual technologies, right? I mean, it's just another dimension that has different physics, different laws, different everything. And in that form, they've been able to devise a way, according to these remote viewers, by which to keep us here. And who knows for how long. Maybe each of us has a different prison term. And it's what they believe to be humane, so that you don't remember how long you've been here. I mean, it's pure speculation, pure theory. They, to a T, all believed it to be cruel, and that it was malicious in nature, and that the souls placed here on this planet were done so because they presented a threat in some manner. And that some of them had been quite spiritually powerful, they said, in previous incarnations. And because of that, entire mazes of these death traps were constructed in order to contain these souls. That comes from their direct testimony. And, when you see them all talk about it independently, it's convincing. And presents itself as yet another probability. Because here's the thing, guys. If you even present one more dimension than the 10 that they suspect, the 11th dimension, everything at that point becomes possible as interplay with this one. Everything, any kind of paranormal activity you can think of, all becomes possible. And it's all because this 11th dimension would possess a completely different reality matrix than the one that we're sitting in now. And it's bleeding in and out. That it's frequency. And, I'm going to leave you guys with this one fascinating, well, I would say it's a semi-quote. I don't know his exact words, but Nikola Tesla once said that the secret to the universe is sound, frequency, and vibration. And what we're seeing with this alien technology, with the ancient mystery schools who were interacting with the Watchers, who bestowed this knowledge on them, to modern day abductee accounts, to modern day physics, what we're seeing is a convergence where all of this is beginning to make a little more sense. Is it still foggy? Yo, you better believe it. But maybe we're coming across the right kinds of ideas finally to explore, to theorize, and to experiment with. And that's what's important. So just when you think you're running out of paranormal mysteries, it keeps growing. The woo keeps going, as it's often talked about. And one major mystery was put to bed. They just wrote 2 articles are out this week about it, about the OSAP program, the CIA agent and his family who had the Dogman experiences, and of course linked it to the hitchhiker effect all the way back to the UFO program, OSAP. That mystery is now solved. So if you know anybody out there that's interested in dogmen and what they are and where they came from, their evidence is conclusive. There is no other answer. That mystery is now solved. What's left is trying to collect a sample of some kind of physical evidence, but they are leaving physical evidence. I mean, footprints were found by the CIA agent mentioned in the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. So that's one big one. We can celebrate this year. One big mystery put down. And that's all I have for you guys tonight. Join me next Thursday night, of course. There's a subject that I was going to cover tonight, but we'll cover it next week. And it's the idea that aliens have infiltrated humanity to the point where they have now compromised human leadership. There's a lot of interesting evidence, and we're going to get to it. So thanks again for being with me, guys. Again, check out all of the videos here on the site. Please hit like, subscribe, and share everywhere so that people can hear the information and we can begin to spread the word about all of this research. I'll see you next week.